of Spoilers. I am Adam. So, talked about this yesterday a little bit when I had my misgivings about, not about covering the show, because I do really like the show, but about covering the show as a Beware of Spoilers episode. I guess the only thing is for branding purposes more than anything else, because it's not a thing that can be spoiled, considering a cursory Google search and going on Wikipedia will give you the answers to what's going to happen in this show. It's that kind of thing where it actually happened. You can go and look up what happened to Elizabeth Holmes, because her trial ended and she was convicted, and I think she was convicted. She wasn't sentenced yet. So if one was really so inclined to want to find out what happened to Elizabeth Holmes without watching the show, you can do a Google search and find out. There's an entire Wikipedia page about, the Theranos fraud scandal and everything that goes along with it. So, of course, talking about The Dropout, the newest show on, sorry, someone just cut me off in a really dumbass way. It's the newest Hulu original series with Amanda Seyfried, spot-on casting as Elizabeth Holmes, and she really deepened her voice a lot, which is, most people are familiar with her as an actress, so they'll see it and be like, oh, that's not her voice, but no, it's her. She just deepened her voice a lot to match what Elizabeth Holmes actually sounds like. And I think that, the strength of it comes from her and Naveen Andrews, who you may be watching the show being like, oh, I know that guy from somewhere. Where do I know him from? It's Saeed on Lost. He's playing the business partner, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's good to see him getting work. I don't think he's really been in too much since Lost ended. I mean, granted, I think with the exception of Evangeline Lilly, most of the cast of Lost hasn't really done too much since Lost ended. Dominic Monaghan has had a pretty, solid showing. He was in Star Wars. No, but he wasn't in The Hobbit either. I mean, what the hell are we doing? We're off on a tangent here. We're not doing a retrospective, where they are, the cast of Lost. We're here to talk about The Dropout. And I think one of the interesting things that The Dropout does is portrays Elizabeth Holmes in a sympathetic light. And I think it's an interesting take, because there were takes about the investigations into her and what she was doing that were well, this is, investigations are happening into her because it's a woman in a male-dominated industry. Be that as it may, she still committed fraud, large-scale fraud, and that there is, problems to be had there. Or she defrauded major organizations, AstraZeneca, Walgreens, CVS, other companies in the pharmaceutical industry, major players in the investment market, and it's there's a lot to be said for that deserves to be investigated and deserves to be looked into, but the fact that she got the scrutiny as quickly as she did, now I'm not 100% in the know of what happened in the case, or how overt the fraud is. Based on the episodes that I've seen, it seems a little bit more obvious that fraud was involved. Granted, we're also getting a third-person narrative view of what happened. We're seeing the larger picture of what's going on in a way that we don't normally see. The investors don't see what happened behind the scenes when they're trying to pitch the, when they're trying to pitch the machine. I forgot what the machine was called, but it's it's the Theranos thing that you put the drop of blood onto the little card goes into the machine reads the blood and comes up with results, and that when they go into how much work went into that, and they got it to work, and then they ship it, and they get to they do finally get to AstraZeneca to do the the investment meeting. That is that is kind of a big deal that they need to address. And they do, and it is something where it's when they get to the point where she's going to commit said fraud, it is portrayed in a way where, like, we have no other option. We got all this way. And then up until that point in the episode, you kind of see how much work she's putting into getting that, getting that meeting and how much work went into getting that all done. It is just kind of, the kind of thing that, like, you wouldn't ordinarily have that in a show like this. You wouldn't have, showing all of that gives kind of license to be like, oh, well, all of these decisions that happen, are for a reason that's not 100% within her control. Like, she tried to do the right thing, and then things continued to go wrong over and over and over, leading to the situation she found herself in. And it is kind of a big, deal they're doing that, because that's the kind of thing that you would see a lot of in male-dominated things of the same topic. Like, if they did a thing about Facebook defrauding someone, if Facebook did ever defraud someone, I don't know if they did or not, but if, like, it's the kind of thing where it's like, if it was Facebook, if it was Twitter, if it was any number of other companies that operate on this large scale in the tech industry, if that was the case, 100% they would be like, oh, well, we have to, make this sympathetic, because the protagonist is still the protagonist. And there is a case to be made that you can make the protagonist just, not likable. Oh my god. On what planet is that okay? I'm sitting here at a traffic light, and I get to, I'm looking at, it's a traffic light that is right by a railroad crossing, and at this light you can turn over the railroad crossing, and I just watched a full 18-wheeler stop dead on the railroad crossing, and it's one of those things like, what the fuck is wrong with you, where you think that's a smart idea? What the fuck? But anyway, this is probably be a shorter episode because I'm going to pick up a copy of a magazine, so I gotta make a stop on the way home, so I'll only record until then. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's interesting to showcase them in a sympathetic light, because they are, like, and the thing is too, they don't shy away from outright being, she's the one who's making the calls. Can you just fucking stop at a stop sign? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. There's no one behind me. You had to get, fuck you in the Jeep. Anyway, there is no, holy shit. Gas has hit $3.57 a gallon. $5 a gallon for Ultimate. Fucking A. And this morning it was $4.09, at the same gas station. Anyway, looking at, like, what was, happening there, and how it's like, they don't shy away from it being like everyone around her caused it, and she was kind of hapless in the middle of it. Like, no, she's kind of, it's her doing this, and it's like her drive to, to be number one and to do what she's gonna do is what causes what ends up happening, and everything that goes along with it. And I think that's an interesting, that's an interesting take on it. That, coupling it with the fact that she, that they do kind of make her sympathetic at the same time, is interesting, because it's like we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar fraud scheme. And it is a really interesting kind of experiment in characterization. And it's something that we don't really talk about a lot on the show, is characterization, which is weird considering how big of a topic characterization falls in for this whole, thing. And like, when it comes to movies and television, and entertainment as a whole, even in video games, characterization is a huge deal. But it's one of those things where it's kind of like sound mixing, where it's like we don't sit here and talk about the sound mix on a movie unless the sound mix is really a problem. But or it's, supremely above average. But like, if it's done right, you don't notice it. If it's done poorly, then you notice it, unless you get experimental. Like, Dune got experimental with its sound. in a way that other movies didn't. So, it got mentioned. So, let's talk about, the way the characterization is done on this show, specifically in regards to Elizabeth Holmes, who is a real figure, a figure in disgrace, and yet is given the chance to, tell her side of the story. It's not an assertion of innocence on her behalf, where it's not like this is who Elizabeth Holmes is and this is why she did, it's not an alternate version of events. It is a portrayal of what happened, but it's kind of like watching the moments that lead up to an accident. It's kind of like watching The Big Short to an extent, where The Big Short is kind of like, what crash is coming. You know the impact point, and you know that this plane is going down. And you're watching every decision that leads into that happening. And not in real time, but you're watching it play out, and you're seeing like, oh, okay, so this happens here, this happens here, this happens here. And by the time you get through episode 2, you're like, oh, we are watching the beginning of a climate to form in this business where the type of fraud that happens is acceptable. Where the people in charge, the adults in the room, are like, oh, we're doing the right thing by doing this. And where it starts out, it's a small place to start out. It's, the machine works, we know the machine works, and we've done a test, and the machine works. We're just going to use that result when we do the live test. We're going to pretend that that's really what's happening. And that's, kind of a thing where you're like, oh, well, it's an interesting kind of, way to look at it. It's so well done in that regard that as, these small things happen, you can see the snowball gaining mass as it goes down the hill, where it's like, we're willing to have this happen, so let's continue down the hill, and we see, oh, well, because of A, then B, because of B, then C, and then, as it goes, and as it gets worse along the way, and as it continues to hurtle down the mountain to its inevitable crashing point, we can see, oh, well, these little things, had it stopped there, would not have led to the big, colossal incident that ended up happening. And it does that very well. That is a huge part of what makes this show work, and why the show works as well as it does. And I think that if it weren't for the fact that, Amanda Seyfried, or however the hell you pronounce her name, does such a great job in the lead, if it weren't for her, I don't think the show would be as memorable. And again, we get another huge movie star making the leap to prestige TV and streaming TV. It's kind of an interesting thing we see going on more and more. And I'm interested to see how does this play out. It's one of those things where it's like watching the first episode, it wasn't like, they dropped the first 3 and I'm kind of like, oh, let me watch the next one right now, and I immediately dove right in and watched the next one and then watched 3 the next day because I was tired. But it's one of those things where it's not, it does a great job of really hooking you in and having it move along, and how it creates a culture around success, and how that culture can create the incidents that we see on large scale today. It really, in a weird way, ties into the Boeing documentary on Netflix, Downfall, where it's this corporate culture about generating money and getting more and more money in, is all about doing that. It is so well done. If you have not watched The Dropout yet, you can go and watch it on Hulu. It's included even at the lowest tier that you get in the Disney Plus bundle. Very, very worth your time to watch. Very entertaining, and definitely worth checking out. So tonight or tomorrow, I should be seeing something a little early. I don't know when I will be seeing it, or when I will be allowed to talk about it. But because it doesn't come out for a little bit, I will be doing a spoiler-free review of it whenever the embargo lifts, but I will be seeing something early. So, strap in for that. Also this week, we are going to have The Adam Project from Netflix, and we're going to be having Turning Red from Disney+. I don't know when I will be seeing Turning Red. I did request an advanced screener from Disney. I'm waiting to hear back from them. I do have 2 emails on my phone that I'm looking at right now while I drive. I'm not reading it. I'm just looking toward my phone, and I see I have 2 little email notifications. I don't know who they're from. It probably is, spam as usual, but we will see. Maybe it's them getting back to me. Hopefully it's them getting back to me. It's not them getting back to me. It's Peacock. That's disappointing. Anyway, that's not why you tune in. You do not tune in to listen to me read my email. We do definitely have Disney's new movie, or Pixar's new movie, Turning Red. We definitely have the big, what's it called? The big, what was the other one called? The Adam Project on Netflix, and I think it's a pretty weak week at the movies, because our good friends at WB put out The Batman last week, and I think that the rest of the studios were like, fuck it, we're not going to put anything out to compete. I think there's like one, or Tyson's Run, I think, is the only movie out this week. I don't know if I'm going to bother seeing that or not. It doesn't strike my fancy as something that is, particularly interesting to me. I hate these, maybe it's just me being a cynic, but I hate these feel-good movies where it's like, and here's a kid who's overcoming something. I don't give a shit. I really don't. Like, I didn't watch Joe Bell last year. And they're always so shitty. And it's always like, well, why are these movies not being well received? They're feel-good stories. And it's like, because they're just not good. Like, holy fuck, if the movie's not good, the movie's not good. I'm not going to sit here in a movie theater for an hour and a half or 2 hours to watch some nonsense about someone run a marathon. It's like, okay, cool, kid ran a marathon. I don't care. Like, I mean, and it's like, odds are I'm going to forget all about it, and I'm not going to go see this movie, and I will see, maybe I'll go see The Batman again. Fuck, The Batman was so good, and I think I've mentioned it in every review I've done, which is, Cyrano and this, but The Batman was so good and so just entertaining all around. I might go and sit in the movie theater for 3 hours again willingly, just to watch that movie a second time. I love that movie so much. If you listen to my review of it, you'll see how much I love that movie. Definitely worth the time. Also, I don't know how much it's worth having these advertisements to not drink and drive on St. Patrick's Day. How much money they're spending on that, when they could just, enforce patrols a little bit better. So yeah. What else have we got? See, they don't want to enforce patrols. They don't want to put, road, what's it called? They don't want to put up the not roadblocks, the outposts. I don't know what the word is. And English is my first language. The drunk driving, checkpoint, that's the word. They don't want to put the checkpoints out for, in the neighborhoods where the drinking's high, because they'll accidentally get a bunch of wealthier white people with drunk driving charges. So they'd rather just, pay to put up these signs that's like, please don't drink and drive. Like, you could just put up, police checkpoints in the towns where the bars are. Like, that would be the smart thing to do. But no, they're not going to do that. Anyway, I'm rambling. So definitely going to finish, I'm going to catch up on Single Drunk Female. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. I will eventually. I'm not saying I'm not going to, because I don't like that show. I really do like that show a lot. But what I'm going to do tonight, if I don't get my screeners, plural, of whatever I requested today from the various media companies I requested them from, if I don't get those, I will be watching Drive My Car. The movie nominated for best international feature, best picture, and best director out of Japan. I do want to see what the big deal about this movie is. I can watch it on HBO Max. If not that, then Mogul Mowgli, and I will watch definitely one of those tomorrow, and we will be doing a Beware spoilers of that in the next few days. It all depends on what email I get from which screeners tonight, if I get any, which apparently I'm getting one today. Apparently I'm seeing one of them today. I don't know which one, but we will see what happens. So until then, have a great rest of your week.